Hi everyone, I'm here at the Yahoo Studios with James JZFB Bardolph.
No nickname, just James Bardolph.
Oh, you've dropped the nickname.
Yeah, I never wanted a nickname.
Okay.
It's I didn't want to be known as a nickname. That's just my initials, which I just copied from Dan.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have like a nickname, in the scene as a person. I just want to be me.
So does that justify Black DDK since you're doing something like Dan?
I didn't choose that, So people can call me what they want, as long as they don't do it in front of me, because then I'll cuss them out. But I'm James Bardolph, and that's
I actually wanted to ask you. So some people will ask me if people spam a Neil, do I find that offensive? And it's hard to answer that question without making it seem like you're being defensive. But for me, I don't care. So I know you said before in an interview before that you don't care what people call you.
No, I don't care. I mean, if you're going to like address me in person, then you should call me by my name.
Yeah.
But online, not fast at all. That's one of a bunch of different things, but they're all cool.
Yeah.
Because they say it in fondness. It's not like they say it as an insult, right?
Yeah,
So it's all good as long as everyone's having fun. Then I don't find it offensive at all.
Yeah. So you're down here for CS Summit, and you've also moved the studio from London over to Santa Monica. You're in your Faces offices. Why did you move?
Santa Ana for the studio.
Santa Ana.
We have a Face office in Santa Monica though. So we moved it because we do Europe and North American CounterStrike from the same studio. If we're in Europe doing North American CounterStrike, then we're doing it until 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's going to affect our performance, among other things. Quality of life is not spectacular. So we thought we'd move the studio to the East Coast of America, because then that way, the West Coast of America, because that way we can work normal working hours, and then we can have a much better performance overall, and it's a lot easier. There are other benefits as well. We're an esports arena in Santa Ana, so we might have some teams playing live at the venue as well this season, or perhaps next season.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is there so it'll be some teams who might come in. It's just if they wanted to voluntarily come in?
It's something that we would organize in advance. I mean, you can't otherwise it turns into a mess basically. So it's something that needs to be planned out, but that's the intention.
Okay. So sometimes you switch from. I think everyone would be most comfortable playing at home, with their seat level adjusted properly and their desk height just right and everything like that. Pillow. You sit on their pillow. I have to do that in my temporary housing.
Some StarCraft players do that, right?
Yeah, Flash brings a ruler to lands and lines up his mouse pad properly. Yeah, people get very, very picky, but that'd be cool. So what is your role at FaceIt? What is your job? What's your job title? What do you do?
I don't think one job title really encompasses the different roles, but my current title is creative director. Most people commonly know me as one of the two main commentators of the content we put out on CounterStrike. That's a part of my job, but also the general direction of the show. I'm responsible for making sure, it's very easy to kind of lose your connection with the community when you have so much growth so quickly, and your show can easily head towards Eurovision Song Contest instead of a video game show. Yeah. Sometimes you need a reminder, like this is a video game show. We're not doing a presentation of some kind of royal award or something, right? So you can get a bit too over the top of things and forget your audience. So part of my job is making sure we remember who our audience is, and have a set which is warm and is engaging with ourselves and our audience, and have a good environment, and just be people rather than like a kind of surgical anonymous broadcast.
Well, you and James strike me as two of the more professional looking casters. When you cast, you obviously have fun when you do it, and I guess that's with respect to what you were just saying. But what does it mean to remember that we're casting video games or playing video games?
Well, if you look at the history of CounterStrike in the last few years, obviously everything has escalated. There's lots of money involved and so on. And with that, I mean, from how we started out in a room with a table, having fun, doing whatever, you feel like there's an escalation. Things need to be bigger, and sometimes things need to be more serious, but that can go too far, and then it's like it's a case of like, who are you trying to impress? Like, what is your broadcast? Who is your broadcast designed for? And our broadcast is designed for our viewers. So if we're sitting, like if you look at some previous seasons, we might be sitting behind a big table with shirts on and so on, and dressing really smart, like it's a football show or something. But that's not what it is. It's video games.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean we have to dress in our underwear or something. You know, there's a balance in between the two. So, and I think it's very easy to lose personality if you try to make things too serious. So as a creative director, I try to keep a balance, so that it's still human, it's still a connection, it's still something you can enjoy. Yeah. You know, because you can have a CounterStrike show, which is, here are some matches, which is like programming, right? Or you can have a show, which is something that is going to engage and entertain you, and that's in and out of the matches. So it's keeping a balance with that kind of thing. The content we do outside of the show as well, which is inserted, like the series of guns that we've tested, like, you know, we've looked at the guns in Counter-Strike and say, how are these guns in real life? How do they compare in terms of the sound, you know, because that was controversial within the community and things like that. That's partly what I'm responsible for.
Was that more fun, or do you think it actually matters how realistic the game is when it comes to the sounds?
Well, I'm very passionate about the game. I'm a nerd when it comes to the game. So it's almost, I think that's one of the most amazing things about my job. It's like, I wonder, with all these controversial sound updates, everyone hates change, right? So it's like, okay, the AWP now sounds like your, I don't know, footballs, right? Not American footballs, English footballs, okay? They used to be made with a pig bladder in the inside originally. And to me, when the AWP gun sound was first changed, it sounded like someone was kicking a half-deflated old-school football. That's how I thought it sounded. So, or, you know, some, like the Deagle was a controversial one. So it's like, well, how do some of these guns sound like the UMP or something, you know, which has a very distinctive sound to it? How do these guns sound in real life? I was curious, and I thought, with how controversial these sounds are, you know, people want to know, like, what is the truth, and how does the game match up? So that's very engaging content for a lot of people, I think. Yeah. So you can go on a journey that interests you, as long as it's engaging to your community as well, and have some fun along the way.
And right now, you've done commentating, and you're producer at Face It, and you're a creative director as well, and you do a lot of things. CounterStrike probably takes up a lot of your time, but you also are a keyboard enthusiast. Have started picking up scuba diving.
Yeah.
I think it was Yanko told me that you just, as soon as you started getting into scuba diving, you ended up with a license to be able to do it in like 2 wetsuits within weeks, and are jumping all in. Is CounterStrike your new passion, or is it just your newest passion? It's just one more thing you're trying in life?
CounterStrike is a game I've played for roughly 15 years. CounterStrike's like, if I had a religion, it would be CounterStrike, basically. But what CS has recently afforded me is the ability to go to so many different places. So when I was in Atlanta, we had a lot of downtime. The first season of E-League, we would do Monday to Thursday. So when we were there for a 2-week period, I did an express course. I did 2 days of hardcore cramming study for scuba diving. Then on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I went to learn to scuba dive. And I did all of that because in the Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta, you can swim with whale sharks in it. So I was like, okay, what do I have to do this? I have to do all of that and $800. But then I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. And now I have a new hobby. So while we're here, I'm going shark diving in Fiji, because you can fly direct from here for a reasonable price. So it's just, I've just tried to make the most of the places I've gone to, because especially in esports, every event has an after party. There's free beer all over the place. You can very easily fall into the trap of just getting hammered all the time, and that's pretty much your entire life. Yeah. But there's so much to do with all the places you travel, and I love travel, so I try to engage all of that. You know, the boat stuff. I mean, we had downtime in the first quarter of this year, so there was a boating house near where I live. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go there, see what they do. So I can learn to drive a boat. I'm going to do that. So I was going to do helicopter as well, but that's like $12,000. So I don't have that money, so never mind. But if I have time to learn, I like learning things, basically. If I have time to learn something, then I'll learn it. Even if it's random, it's fun.
So you've tried a bunch of different things, very ambitious. But a lot of people know you, or most people maybe know you as the CSGO commentator, on-camera talent.
Yeah.
Would you identify as an entertainer?
So I think so. I like to inject humor into what we do and have fun. And I have a really good relationship with Dan as well. So it's not so much the way I see it is what we do is not so much commentary as much as it's like a conversation. And, you know, people hopefully like to tune in and listen to that and be a part of that. So that's the style we roll with. And it's engaging and also fun. So I think it's, you know, it's good, it's healthy.
Where'd you guys meet, you and Dan?
We met at Face It. He worked at Face It already. The way I got into commentary for CSGO, actually, I wanted to do it for a very long time, but I had 0.7 upload at home, so I couldn't stream. So I contacted some commentators in the UK who were streaming and said, like, you know, if you need a co-commentator, I would like, you know, I can join on Skype or whatever, but I can't broadcast myself. Never heard any replies. And then Fnatic were doing an event in Meltdown, and Duncan was commentating with Khan. And I was like, I can do better than this. so I contacted Khan and said I'd be interested in doing some commentary. And he put me in touch with Face It. And then they had me come over. But I had production experience as well. So I was doing some production for them and some commentary as well, which obviously I don't actually remember the initial commentary that I did, but I'm sure it was terrible. Dan will probably say it's terrible. But then I don't know. We did an entire season together. We added some segments, and you know we were proactive and had fun, and then developed into better commentators, and it went from there really.
So the competition is really interesting to me. I had another question about that, but I also want to ask you, how do you feel about a good ribbing with casters and players, analysts, anybody with on the broadcast and players? And do you think it's fun? Do you enjoy it? Is there a line that can be crossed?
It's good fun. In terms of ribbing, I mean, there's always a line that can be crossed. I don't think it is often crossed, at least within the talent. If you're talking about, commentary during a show, I don't think it's crossed too much. Maybe on social media, there is a lack of understanding sometimes of places that might be sensitive for someone. So potentially it can be crossed there. But I think within the talent, 95% of the time, it's pretty good. And it makes for a fun show, because if all the talent develop relationships with each other, it just makes for a better broadcast. Where if they're all like, don't really know each other, don't know if they can, you know, poke here or poke there, and they're very stiff, then it's not going to be a good broadcast. So it's all good, you know. And especially with the CS I had at Cologne, there's a lot of ribbing with that, and you know, very popular highlights. But it's all good, it's all fun. If you can't laugh at yourself, then you've got serious problems. You can't be in the limelight if you can't laugh at yourself. You're going to be very limited in what you can do and how far you can go. So that's something that you have to, you know, has to be a part of you, basically.
So that actually leads me to my next topics. You were actually a Street Fighter commentator, producer, and player.
Yep.
And those are your roots, aren't they?
Those are, I wouldn't say, you know, I have multiple roots, if that makes any sense, because I was playing CounterStrike for a lot longer than that. How I got into the FGC, I mean, when I was a kid, I used to play in an arcades in London, but I didn't play like where everyone was playing competitively. I just played in my local one. I didn't have any money, and they had an Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 cabinet. And the guy who worked there would work on his own, so I would get his lunch for him. He'd give me the money, and then he'd give me free credits on that. But also the Daytona USA machines had really like laid back seats like this, and they had little pockets. And if someone was wearing jeans, the pound coins would roll out of their pockets into those little gaps. So you'd always find, you know, a few pounds there and get some free games in. So in 2009, I was playing CounterStrike and I think TF2 as well. And I got an alert on Steam that Street Fighter 4 was being released. So that's like 9 months after it came out on consoles. And I was like, holy crap, I want to play this game. So I kind of got back, well, I got into the competitive side of the FGC in 2009. So technically you could say I'm an 09er in that respect. So, but very quickly I found the local scene. That same year, loads of us went to Paris.
What was that, an 09er?
An 09er, yeah. An 09er is a derisive term for people who are new to the fighting game community when Street Fighter 4 came out, and you know, they're considered to be noobs and whatever. So I got involved in a community there. I took a camcorder with me. I used to record the matches and put them on YouTube, but I quickly noticed that in North America, there was live streaming and there was lots of videos on YouTube and so on. And because of that, they had more opportunities, sponsorship, and so on. But the entire European scene didn't really have that. It was very lackluster. There was nothing going on. So a point came where instead of going on a European circuit as a player, I moved into the broadcasting. So we had equal representation to what was going on in North America. So then I basically, as far as Street Fighter 4 is concerned, I basically became the broadcaster of pretty much like 90% of the entire European circuit, and did white label broadcasts for corporate stuff as well. I'm still involved in the fighting game community, but very much behind the scenes.
Were your initial aspirations to become like a pro player, or did you?
I just love playing the game, and I had a full-time job, so I could afford to fly to tournaments and play. I called myself worst youth ever because I learned on a pad to play competitively. Well, I started learning, but then we still had an arcade scene, so I sold the pad. So I had no choice but to learn stick. But obviously, it takes a while to have execution. So I gave myself that nickname. And
you've mentioned there's a difference between players who grew up playing an arcade and players who grew up playing on a pad or a console. What are your thoughts on?
I think if you play in an arcade, then you care more because you're putting money in. You care more about your wins and losses and so on. It's very easy. Like I'm not motivated. One of the problems I have with fighting games is I'm not motivated to play them at home. Whereas in the arcade, I was motivated to play. I had this Chinese guy called Sky, right? He would always be in the arcade, and he'd play Chun-Li and I'd play Zangief, and he would beat me 95% of the time. So I'll just come with a tower of pound coins and just sit there and just sink them in and just try to figure out how to beat him. Yeah. That was what I love to do. You could do that online, but then you don't have. There isn't really the will to win. There's nothing on the line. You don't have the incentive. Whereas in the arcade, you've got your own respect, embarrassment, but it's not about the money. But it's just the environment is different there, but you have the social aspect as well. There used to be Marvel versus Capcom 2 ranking battles. They used to have a camcorder set up for that. It's just a great community. But I feel like it's, you're out in the wild when in an arcade, whereas at home, I think it's a lot more difficult to get better. And it's the same, my friend Logan, he used to run weekly tournaments in London, which I used to broadcast as well after work. And people would come down from Manchester, which is like a 4-hour drive, or 2 hours on the train and get the last train home and stuff. And it's just, any live environment is going to make you a much better player than playing online at home where you don't have anyone to talk to or anything like that.
Is there something about that as opposed to what we have in CounterStrike where it's like you can just kind of queue up whenever you want? Do you wish there was that aspect of this idea of there being an arcade and having to put something online every time you try?
To try and compare it to CounterStrike, I think it's mainly the pug mentality versus playing in a team, because people who play pugs, let's say matchmaking, right? People who are global elite and might post a thread on Reddit saying I'm global in this and that, right? And they think they're good at the game. Yeah. But if you were to watch one of their games, like even the concept of throwing a flashbang for their teammate is non-existent. No. It's just about self-preservation and aiming, and sometimes there'll be some communication in there, but working as a team, working as a unit is practically non-existent. And there's a whole world of CounterStrike that they have no idea exists. You put that kind of person, let's say Inferno Banana, right? You put that person on Banana and they make one step by car, and maybe there are 2 CTs there, they throw a pop flash, he's blind, someone pops out and kills him, right? It's like that kind of action, you won't be prepared for that playing pugs, So there's definitely a disconnect there. And there's lots of learning materials for CounterStrike on the internet, but I don't know why people don't get from A to B. Maybe they need to be led there more. I mean, Valve used to do those pro player tips, right? Even on the blog page, you've still got the little thumbnail at the bottom, but they don't do those anymore. So as much as the game is popular now, it could be so much more if there was more of a drive, if there was more awareness from the casual user to make that cross to play in teams and so on. So that would be the divide in CounterStrike. So
there's actually like matchmaking was announced in China, which I was going to talk about in a video pretty soon, but actually maybe get your thoughts on it. I know that for me, if without matchmaking, I would have never found a team. Never found a team would probably not be here talking to you right now.
Yeah.
Just of how that all snowballed. Do you see the value in having a matchmaking being brought to China? Are you excited for the new emerging Asian markets, do you think that they're going to thrive?
The matchmaking function is critical to the success of CounterStrike. In old CounterStrikes, I never played in teams. I mean, I worked for one team, but really, I spent my time just playing on pub servers with 24 people or something. And that gets repetitive and boring, which is why I ended up playing TF2, and then I got bored of that eventually. So matchmaking, the structure of matchmaking is crucial to the success. I think the main thing is how they get into the market. I mean, none of us really know what the current exposure of worldwide Counter-Strike is in China. And I think it's China where they have like a kind of pay-to-win version of Counter-Strike. It's China or Korea, I can't remember which one it is. But how they take a share of the market is going to be very important. And then having a structure of tournaments and so on to continue to engage people in the early stages. I mean, that's going to be crucial to success. But the matchmaking is absolutely crucial, because the good thing is, because of the ranking system, you can be terrible at the game and still have fun. And when you're in a 1 versus 2 and you're silver 1 and you kill those 2 people, right, it might look terrible to us, right? But that's at that level, that's exhilarating. That's an important thing. So for new players, you can get that adrenaline rush and then get invested in the game. And then matchmaking gives you that mountain to climb. So that's a very important way into the game for new people.
Now we started talking about Counter-Strike, but I actually had a couple more Street Fighter questions. There was Street Fighter 5 at E-League recently.
Yeah.
Did you try to become a part of that broadcast? Did you have any want to be on the
desk?
No.
I've done some commentary mainly for Street Fighter 4 before, but I was never a dedicated commentator. I did a lot of French events where they would have like 12 fighting games and have a budget to send in like 1 Street Fighter commentator. So I'd have to like solo cast things I have no idea about. But there are people who are in the Street Fighter 5 scene. Like, I have no business being on the broadcast there. So if they wanted some advice, I would have been happy to give some, but they didn't need me for that. So no, I wouldn't want to. Even if they asked me, I wouldn't have done it, probably, because I feel like I'm taking something away from someone who's more deserving. But in general with Street Fighter 5, I'm less visible on the front of the FGC, but in the background there's a lot going on.
With
so
production and so on.
With things here and there.
With things.
Yeah.
Got hands. Okay. According to Urban Dictionary, arms house was a term used by Mandems in Hackney.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, arms house is from the Mandem. So beef. Americans, your slang for beef. Arms house would be the equivalent of that. And I was having this is quite the circle actually. There was the guy who used to manage PR for Capcom called Leo Tan. I was doing. There was a long time ago. Super Street Fighter 4 was I think it was the first time you could bet on at least a fighting game, maybe an esport game, at least in the UK, with Paddy Power. They did a promotion and I streamed that for them in their PR office. And I was having a chat with him and he said he loved the slang like arms house in the FGC. So when I was thinking of a name to call my stream, I thought of that. But now he works at E-League. Oh. So one day he was at E-League during a Counter-Strike and he walks in, I was like, what the hell? Like, blast from the past. So that's awesome for them as well. So again, they've got a lot of advice from him. He's pretty old school. So yeah, he's responsible for the name of my company, but he doesn't know that yet.
Interesting.
Yeah, maybe he knows it now.
Actually named Boxer my brand after a player from StarCraft, and he doesn't know that either. So yeah, maybe one day. You also have some roots, as you mentioned, many roots in poker as well. And not only played it, but also commentated it. And that was all before Street Fighter, wasn't it?
Well, I learned to play poker at the first LAN I went to for Counter-Strike, actually, which was just a local LAN with friends in Blackpool, which I won somehow. But yeah, I used to play in all the semi-illegal clubs in London, which got shut down. So I've got a long history. So I play some of the larger tournaments in London on occasion, which are live streaming the esports tables. But yeah, the recent one I went out in 3 hands with pocket. I had kings full of aces versus quad aces. So, such is life. Yeah. The problem with those tables is you never know what people are going to have, because some people look like Kiyashima. He had learned poker like a week before, for example. So, it's a wide range on those tables. But poker is a lot of fun. Poker is a big passion as well. I liked to be a poker tourist. So whenever I traveled, I'd try and play one game of poker somewhere. I won my first tournament in Vegas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was really good. And the second one, that was in Caesar's Palace when they used to have the giant card room. And it was a $70 tournament, and I won $900-ish. I went back the next day, but because I'd won, I just got drunk and stuff. But someone shoved against me with ace jack, and I called with ace king, and he just started screaming. And this is deep in the card room. This card room's like 6,000 feet, square feet, and we're at the end where the exit isn't. And I eliminated him, and he just walked out through the whole thing, just shouting. It was insane. Yeah, but I went out soon after that because I was just messing around. But yeah, I love poker. Poker's awesome.
Has poker taught you anything about what to do when life deals you a bad hand?
Actually, I worked as a commercial negotiator for 7 years. So I was doing business-to-business negotiation and playing poker at the same time. So the two, it was a great, in terms of how to read people, body language and things, that was really, really cool. And really valuable in life in general. So it helps you identify bullshit artists very, very quickly, sometimes before they even start talking. So in terms of like life lessons and so on, it just helps you see through nonsense, which is very valuable. Stops people wasting your time.
Has that translated into skills that maybe have helped you in either when you're playing Street Fighter or CounterStrike? I know there's like Griffin Banger, for example, made the final table, I think, the World Poker Tour.
Yeah.
Have you felt like it's helped you improve where it comes to like reads in fighting games or reads in Counter-Strike?
I think it's good in terms of habits, habitual reads. And you know, one thing that's good in Counter-Strike, especially when you're on the T side, is you can provide your opponent with evidence. Like, you know, if you're throwing the smoke grenade here, you could do 2 rounds where you try and do this. Like, for example, on Mirage, right? You can be in Mirage apps, and you can throw a smoke that lands onto short, and then you can, you know, bounce the flash off and try and push in. Like, let's say you're on an eco round or a force buy round, and you do that twice, and it fails. Then you do it again, but this time you're one person, and you know, maybe you pull a guy off mid, pull the short guy into B, and then, you know, when he goes back into position, you've got someone deep and you smoke 10x or whatever. Things like that. You know, you can offer someone evidence of a habit and then break that habit and punish them for using that old information. So that's something you can do in poker with your betting patterns, for example. You know, bet when you're weak and limp when you're strong or whatever, that kind of thing. So you can behavior. You can use it. You can look at other people's and use your own as a weapon. So that's definitely something that crosses over.
You've been in the game a long time, and I think one last thing is we've all got, those of us who've been around for a while in esports have a porous conditions esports story, if that makes sense. Do you have one? A story of, actually you've done in Counter-Strike a lot of premier tournaments.
Yeah.
In general, you kind of hit the ground running, but maybe in the FGC, if you had like a porous conditions story, like they've set you up in a hotel that was really grimy and you've had to deal with like long days and just not showering or something like that?
Not really with the FGC, actually. I have a pretty good relationship with the people I work with in the FGC, and some places like DreamHack, we kind of built it from very little to quite a lot. So porous conditions, it's a tough question because, you know, you got to be political. You don't want to call people out that you work for, but poor conditions. I think one of the things is there's always terrible communication at majors with who is commentating the final. It's always, I feel like organizers feel like there's tension between the commentators and it's all a bit cloak and dagger, but there really isn't. It's like, just tell us who it is so we know who needs to go to bed early. You know? Yeah. it's like just, this is not Sunset Beach or something. It's just unnecessary. So that's one thing. There hasn't always been a lot of consideration as to what commentators need or why you're doing something. Like, there was a period of time where, you know, we'd go to an event and everybody would be jumbled. It's like, you've hired us because people want to, you know, see James and Dan, but Dan's over there commentating with X, I'm over here commentating with Y. Yeah. But that time has passed now. So I would say poor conditions would be, actually poor conditions, there was one major where we were commentating the studio segment before the live crowd is in, and the desk was about this high. So, you know, if you look at League of Legends, for example, almost all the time their commentators are standing up when they're commentating, and the reason I assume they're doing that is because if you look at singers as another example, is that your diaphragm is in the best position for you to project your voice. So if I'm commentating and my chair is 10 centimeters off the ground, then my diaphragm is squashed and I can't project my voice. So I'm going to be doing, I can't do as good as I would otherwise. Right. And I often like to stand up when I'm commentating. At E-League, I'm mostly standing up, even in the studio segments. But if the screen is here, I'm 6'4", man. Mm-hmm. If I'm up there, I can't see the screen if I'm standing up. So I'm forced into a situation which is not ideal. Mm-hmm. So at the E-League major, for example, I emailed the guys and said, can we please have adjustable stools and a higher desk so people can adjust the stools as necessary for whatever seating position they want, but the desk is high enough so people can stand if they want to and explain the whole diaphragm thing. And they ordered exactly the example that I gave them, which was brilliant. Nice. So, there can be, people never ask the commentators, for example, they never ask you what you want, what you need. Like sometimes we've done live events where we've been in a room and we can't hear the crowd. As a commentator at a LAN, you want to rise with the crowds. And sometimes you take cues from them and you'll build tension accordingly. If you can't hear the crowd, you can't do that. You're disconnected from it. So things like that can be issues. So I would say in terms of conditions, just ask the commentators what they need. Take advice from them.
You work at ECS, but you also are the main casters for ECS. So you obviously have a lot of good input, and I'm sure other commentators are happy. What other things do you bring to major events or to just the online casting or just a broadcast in general that you feel like ECS are doing right that you wish other people did better? Or
I vetoed the use of split screens at ECS LANs. So you'll never see a 1v1 where you've got a tiny screen here and a tiny screen here. As a commentator, that totally sucks because if you, obviously most of the time, we'll have our own observer machine, but we need to commentate to a degree, keeping a loose description of what the viewers are seeing, right? So we can't just sit on our observer screen all the time. So when you're trying to commentate a dual situation where someone's trying to clutch or whatever's going on, and you're focusing on the middle of the screen, and then suddenly you've got this. It's like, that's a problem to deal with, but that's not even the main thing. If you think about the average person is probably watching on, say, a 20-inch screen or a laptop or something, that's already pretty small. You split that screen in half. Yeah. And a perfect example as well, because some people take different approaches to this. Some people put 69 screen here, 69 screen here, and just have these weird gaps. Some people do columns. But if you remember the shot Fallen did, where someone, he swiped his AWP on overpass on the stairs.
Oh, yes.
Someone who was not even on the screen.
1v4,
right?
I think it was.
That one particular shot. Like there was a shot that Kenny S did a long time ago as well on Mirage B, where he didn't even see the person, he just saw their shadow, and he swiped them. If you have a 1v1 screen, that's so much information you're not going to see. That's a potential scenario, along with the problem of it just being tiny. Yeah. So we just don't do that because it's, you should focus on one person. I mean, yes, you might end up focusing on a person who didn't get the last kill or whatever. But I mean, I think that's a better situation personally than a split 1v1 screen. So things like that, we'll have input. Like we don't do 1v1 because
it's funny you bring it up because Starladder, obviously, I feel like they had, of any 1v1 screen, the most tasteful version of it. But for the reasons that you mentioned, not being able to know what everybody else is watching and therefore basically splitting your attention between two things and not watching anything is a huge problem. Yeah. They also did the bomb timer pretty tastefully, but the concept of having the bomb timer is the real problem, isn't it? That you know how long now somebody has to defuse the bomb or how much time they have left. Yeah,
there are differing opinions on that. I think it's too much information because, I mean, there was a perfect example, which I actually tweeted about during the broadcast, where someone was defusing the bomb and it's like, he had 10 seconds, but there's 9 seconds on the clock. So then there's no anticipation. There's no hype. There's no tension. I mean, having tension, having a crescendo afterwards, be it good or bad, is one of the things that makes CounterStrike so awesome. So if you have like total information in that scenario, it completely takes that away. I mean, how crazy is it when you're in a crucial round, someone's defusing, they've got 1 second left, and that thing just fades away, and then they're not going to make it, right? Yeah. That's amazing. If you don't have that, then it sucks. What I think would be cool is, like, I actually emailed Valve a few months ago because I thought that if you're a new viewer or a casual viewer, it's not obvious enough. I was in a hotel actually in San Diego when Anders and Semler were at E-League. I was watching it on a CRT in a motel. And I thought to myself, it's not obvious enough that the bomb gets planted if you're a new viewer. It's confusing enough that you're watching an esports game and some people can't even tell when the halves change. But it should be more obvious when the bomb's planted. And they've released functions so people can do that themselves. But as far as the bomb timer goes, I would do it for like 40 to 35 seconds or 40 to 30 seconds and have it fade out. So you know it's going on in the background, but you don't need complete information in that respect because it just kind of kills the suspense. And then I think that's a lesser broadcast, in my opinion.
Next week, you're going to be doing CS Summit.
Yeah.
Is that technically the smallest CS event that you've done? I mean, it's very tight-knit at the very least, but...
As a commentator, I suppose it might be because outside of our own event, it's mostly been majors.
Yeah.
So I guess technically speaking, it's a small event, but it's a studio event where the players will likely come onto the couch. It's kind of like the Face It Season 2 finals we did in our studio where we had players on the desk and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, exactly, that's fun. And I think it's quite suited to our style of commentary, so I think we should have a lot of fun doing that.
Cool. Anything else coming up for Face It, for ECS that people should know about?
I'll leak some information. So that sounds really funny. So we've done a lot of gun videos. We were in Vegas a few months ago and we did a blast. We did loads of videos on guns and asked for people's requests. And it was mostly AWP and Deagle. And we've got one of those two coming out in our next season of ECS. It's a pretty big video. We met the person who invented the gun.
The gun?
Yeah. So it's pretty in depth.
Oh.
And I was struggling to just make it compact. It was a almost 25-minute video. So okay, we've got to sacrifice this. We had factory tours, all that kind of stuff. So one of those two videos is going to be in the next season.
Ah, very cool. Thank you, James, for taking the time to stop by the office and talk to me. And for more coverage just like this, make sure to check it out on Yahoo Esports.